not the first time that's happened. I think I'm going to change my surname once and for all after that. Thank you very much, Padraig. It is great to be here. It's humbling to be here, especially after those two speakers. It's also terrifying. I've never been to a leadership conference, let alone spoken at one. And also because I've learnt that this is being broadcast to other countries, and this morning I'm showing you our dirty laundry. So when you tweet, don't tweet any of that stuff, because my board actually don't know I'm here, and tweet the really good stuff if you can. And I do encourage you to tweet. And follow me, please, because I feel loved when you do. And I'm also in competition with my kids for Twitter followers. So please follow me, please. So this morning I'm going to take you through the journey of PSA. I started there 3 years ago, nearly to the day, and the journey of where we've come from, what the establishment is, and where we've been, the process we used with Padraig to be where we are today. So, hands up who's heard of the Pharmacy Guild of Australia? So that's not us. So, hands up who's heard of the Pharmaceutical Society? Oh, God. And hello to this staff up the back, fantastic team up the back. There's four PSA staff up the back. Hello, Deb and Glenn and Donna and Simone. So the Pharmacy Guild are the union for the owners, 4,000 community pharmacy owners in Australia. They're the union for them. We are the Pharmaceutical Society. We're the peak professional body for the profession, representing 30,000 pharmacists. Actually, it's 30,000, not 29,000. We don't use megaphone advocacy, really. That's not really us. That's the graphic designer at my work taking some poetic license there, and that's the health minister. Obviously, we'd like more, quiet knock on the door and, excuse me, minister. That's more of our scene. But we do a lot of advocacy. Our vision is to improve the nation's health through excellence in pharmacist care. We're a not-for-profit, and membership isn't compulsory. What we do are three main things. We help pharmacists deliver excellence in care through education and practice change. We do a lot of advocacy around the role of pharmacists, which are underutilised in Australia, and we help pharmacists maintain excellence through professional standards, code of conduct, and ethical code of conduct, and so on. So we're the custodians of that. So when you think of the AMA and the RACGP, we're more like the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. We're not a union. So that's the only ad I'm doing for the day. So thank you for letting me do that. So the starting point, as Padraig said, we've been around for a long, long time. When you go to our offices, there's a lot of these honour boards sitting around with names dating back to, I know that's not very clear, 1867, 1855. Lots of boards like this with men on them. Highly creative, of course, as we learnt this morning from Bob. Perfect sort of tone for the innovation, adaptive sort of culture that we all really need in today's society, and particularly for our average demographic, which are largely, 60%, 70% of the pharmacists of today are women. Most of the average age is around 27 years old. So this is perfect for that, isn't it? So we really speak to that. Which we are changing, and we're changing pretty rapidly recently. When I joined the organisation 3 years ago, and this is the one not to tweet, by the way, our membership was in free fall from 2010. It wasn't looking pretty. This was associated with a whole bunch of other issues that the organisation was facing at the time. We had a lot of years of operational budget deficit. We did merge in 2008 on paper, but we hadn't actually merged as 7 different companies in reality. And the culture of that was carried through to the organisation. Certainly was in 2008 when I joined in 2013. We had a very heavy governance structure, membership organisation, 6 board meetings a year, 2 days each, which was kind of heavy. Lots of board papers. I've had 16 direct reports I was meeting with weekly, which is fun. A very siloed and protective culture. We work in Victoria, this is the way we do things. Well, in Queensland we do things, but if you're a member organisation with the Federation, you know how these things work. The culture, I think, was very siloed, and that was validated in the leadership survey that we did, circle survey we did. Very protective of my own patch. We've always done it this way. And no real sense of urgency either. We're plugging along. A lot of technical professional people employed. kind of an academic culture, which was very comfortable, I think. And 4 CEOs since unification as well, quite a high turnover of leadership there. So when I started, I worked on what I was very comfortable with, which was stabilising the organisation with membership, and the great teamwork that we progressed in the last couple of years have stabilised membership, and we're just starting to grow that, as I'll show later. We have done well to diversify income as well, and we've returned surpluses for every year that I've been there, which has been positive. We haven't, with a show of hands earlier, who's heard of us? Well, we've had a proactive campaign to address that. Our strategic agenda wasn't really present when I started, so that was a bit of a no-brainer. But I still had questions about, well, do we have the right people who have been here for 40 years, 15 years? Because they've been there for that long, are they necessarily the right sort of people? And do we have the right culture to actually take this organisation to the next level? We all know that Generation Y, particularly with membership organisations, they don't generally tend to join. I think the only professional group that's really growing at the moment are physios and us. Because a lot of Gen Ys don't feel they need to belong to professional organisations. So what's in it for me? We don't need to belong to a greater community. So I did go about, with the help of Donna, who's the HR director, to look at, well, what are the options here for getting someone to help us move this culture along? And so I interviewed 3 or 4 different agencies to help us do that. And of course, this man came along, and I listened to, he's embarrassed that I'm showing that, of course. I listened to each of these consultants tell me about what's going to work for the organisation. And all of them were cookie cutter type solutions. What I was searching for was, well, what is the evidence on leadership? That's not my expertise at all. And I'm not a clever guy. I like to know where the evidence lies and who's got hold of it and who's using the best of that evidence. And that's exactly what Patrick delivered to us. I wanted to know what is the evidence on the frame that you're using, and he convinced me overnight that to go with Leadership Circle was the best approach for us. So the way that we approached developing the team, back in early 2016, we had this thing called the Summit of the Summit. I don't know whether any of you watched Utopia at all, where they had the Summit of the Summit. That's what we called it. We thought it was funny anyway, but we had a Thredbo. We all trudged up to Thredbo and had this 2-day leadership meeting there with my 16 direct reports. And we did a lot of the stuff that was essential to do at that time, which was, planning workshops, some SWOTs, strategic action planning, operating rhythm, some stuff that we hadn't been doing because I was busy working to try to stabilise and grow the organisation. And Patrick sort of said to me, Lance, you really need to, and I'm not going to put on your accent, Lance, you really need to look at your role in the organisation and your senior leader's role and start to address some of the concerns that you have got and your senior team do. And so we started with and he said, we'll start softly, which I didn't know really meant he's going to pummel me with a cricket bat. That's what it felt like. But he started with the 360. And so I turned up at the summit and got some feedback from my staff, which was all very positive. Visionary leader, yes, this is all very nice to hear over a session. But then came the next bit, which was all the feedback, and I sat there for 2 hours listening to this, which was personally one of the big turning points for me, realising, well, yeah, I need to demonstrate personally that I'm committed to this change, and I do need feedback. And if we're going to grow this organisation together, we need to do so openly and transparently, and to understand how we can actually improve our leadership individually and commit to that change. So this demonstrated to my team that I was open to that process and leading that process and actively engaged in it. Part of this process, of course, was looking at using the Leadership Circle survey, and Patrick gave a sort of 1-hour presentation on what the survey meant, what good results looked like, and its correlation to effectiveness in the organisation, and what the reactive responses would look like, and the effectiveness on organisations and so on. So we all were on the edge of our seats waiting for the results and the slide to appear on the screen, all thinking we're going to have this wonderful, wonderful mushroom-shaped, highly creative result, and we got that. Yeah, so that's the one not to tweet, by the way. No. So And I remember having, it's a pity we don't have that, the leadership circle bit of vinyl we have here, but Patrick asked me, Lance asked me first, where are we on that? And I went and stood right in the middle of the reactive space, and he said, well, how do you feel? And I said, well, I feel ashamed. And that's why I've titled this From Shame to Game. I totally felt ashamed of the result and my role in it. And it was I had this flashback to when I grew up on a farm, to the day that we ran over one of our dogs. Don't worry, we had 6 of them, so it's okay. But as you do on a farm. And I left the gate open. My dad ran over it. My brother forgot to feed it, so it was out near the tractor, and was pointing fingers at one another. I'd love to do one of these surveys on the family. Actually, I suspect to be way down the bottom here. And anyway, the shame that we all shared about the result was evident, and it was very intense and in many ways life-changing. That together we've had this result. And Patrick invited us, the other team members, to step up and talk about how they felt about the result of the survey and where we actually wanted to be. And Patrick called me afterwards and said, well, how was that? And I said, well, that was just great. That was fantastic. That felt brilliant. But I think it's a great starting point. And we did talk about the people who didn't participate on that. And there were 3 or 4 people who just opted out of that whole process. And Patrick said to me, through this process, you're going to have people who are going to opt out, and there's going to be others who you're going to have to opt out. And that's been part of the process as well. So that really was a turning point for the organisation. There was that shared sense of responsibility, and really was a launching pad for us to progress the sort of fix. So what did we do? We did revise the operating rhythm. I stopped meeting weekly with 16 staff, and we had a refined operating rhythm. We strengthened our strategic plan, and I gave authority for each of our leaders, each of our executive, to own that plan. So each of those 16 leaders owned a component of that, and that's filtered now through to each of their staff. So that's been and for them to feel some ownership and accountability for that's been really quite profound. We have a strong link to the budget rather than kind of guessing what it is and then retrofitting the budget, which has been important. We have these business metrics that took us some time to develop. Before this process, it was very difficult to get a handle on what are the 3 main drivers? What are the 3 things we're actually going for? And synthesising those business metrics, which have been around membership as one of them, obviously, and having that tip of tongue for every staff working in the organisation has been critical. Each one of them knows that what their membership results are for that year, and we collectively rejoice when there is a good result there. It also got us talking about, well, do we have the right people to take this organisation forward, the right mix of people? And culturally, do we have shared values around what's important to us? What are those values if we have them? And we did have some unarticulated values that we had never written down for the organisation. Was everyone, and I use this metaphor throughout this whole process, who's on the bus with this? And that actually formed part of the kind of dialogue in this change process, and everyone kind of owned that. What's preventing us from being on that, and so on. Who's responsible for this culture change, this realisation that it is us as executive leading that process and taking ownership of it? And I think what was an important process too is that we focused first and foremost on the 5, I guess, main people that I work with in the organisation. It's the Chief Operating Officer, HR, and 2 myself included in that, and the Head of Education and the other Head of Policy and Innovation. And we actually undertook the leadership survey for the 4 of us, including myself. And that was the result for the 4 of us, collated result for the 4 of us at the time, because we were just getting a new COO on board. Which provided a good foundation for us moving forward, but also the process that we used for this was the process that was described earlier. We did analyse our own results, understood internally what we each needed to change, reflected on that, and it was, as one of my staff said, like we were sort of peering into each other's soul, which was another change process and a moment of change for the senior team. That allowed them to take further responsibility and ownership of this issue. As a result of this work that we've done, we now have shared values, one PSA, and it's interesting to see One Uniting, I think, used a similar sort of process in their values, so they must have stolen it from us. So working as one was really important. That, as I said earlier, actually becoming and actively progressing the One PSA team was really, really critical. And this is embedded in staff personal development plans, their PDs. When we develop new committees with the profession, this is embedded as a requirement for that and so on. So this is actually being lived. We have a noble purpose. You know, I turn up to work because I like to know that I'm actually delivering something with passion that actually changes someone's life at the end of the day. And staff are deeply committed to that. You know, we're not-for-profit, so we don't pay as well as commercials, but this is why people turn up, and we wanted to clearly articulate that. Equity was critically important there as well. Pride and passion in the work, success, we do strive for success, and always learning that part of this process is about that we can always be better. As I said, this is embedded in the staff personal development plans. We have staff focus groups that have allowed us to staff to take ownership of these sort of value statement and to talk through how can we make this live within the organisation. And a focus away from the siloed mentality towards the working as one, and actively calling out the behaviours and the strategies and structures that go toward this value statement. So that's been really positive. The staff survey have shown some immediate positive results for this. So confidence in senior management has leapt in the year, up 16%. Our role modelling's increased, and senior management listening to staff has also increased. What's changed as a result of this work that we did has been we have seen membership stabilise, and we're now growing, despite most other membership organisations actually on the decline. Our annual staff survey comparison to benchmark, passion and engagement in the organisation is up 5% from the last survey, and up 2% on industry benchmark for not-for-profits. And progress, staff perceptions, we're doing that's up 21%. So staff believe that we're doing the right thing, and that's 3% on industry benchmark. So that's been a really positive result as well. We've had a proactive campaign to raise our public profile, and this was actually from the A Current Affair, that wonderful show a few nights back, where we had one of our vice presidents up speaking positively about the role of pharmacists. And again, we do public surveys on this, and we've been able to increase that public exposure, which I think is important if we're to progress the role of pharmacists in Australia. So that's worked quite well as well. And most importantly, for the summit that we had this year, this is the picture of the team there. We took the survey again in March this year, and the results, and there we are standing in front of the vinyl. That's been the change in the year. So that was previous, and that's a year on. So again, that's taken from the 16, 15, 16. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's been the result of all of our working toward that over the past year, and we had a good celebration that night. There's been a few flow-ons, and that's nearing the end of my presentation too. There's been a few flow-ons from this as well. So this is the established thinking when a lot of people think of PSA. I think very recently we announced the results of the branch committee and elections, and we've had a record number of early career pharmacists actually nominate for leadership roles in the organisation, as well as women, which has been an incredible result for the organisation. We've got a women in leadership panel which is trying to address that inequity, and I wonder what those old men would think of us marching in the Mardi Gras next year, which we posted this on our Facebook page. I think I forget, Glenn, we've got something like 400, 500 likes or more. I mean, this has been met really well by our profession. And also, we're building a new office this year. We've demolished the old one, and so we're going to have a brand new look too. So, look, I'd just like to thank my staff who have actually made this happen, and the commitment to the staff and their role in it, which has just been brilliant. We did, last year, we wanted to kind of demonstrate to our membership and more broadly this changed culture in the organisation. So we sat around the EMT, executive management team, and thought, what can we do? Maybe do something at our conference. You know, we need to show that we're not the old crusty men of PSA. We're appealing to the younger pharmacists. We work together as a team, and we wanted to involve our elected officials. There's 60 elected officials we have in the organisation across the various states. And we came up with the idea of a flash mob. So at our conference, so everyone was saying, there's no way you'll get that done. So what we did, my daughter actually did the choreography. I sent it around on YouTube to everyone. And at our conference, which attracts 800, 1,000 pharmacists too, I led that flash mob with the senior team. And the day before the conference, our elected officials came to a forum and I taught them the dance. And so, to my huge embarrassment, and I texted this YouTube video to Patrick, and he said, "Oh, that'd be good to show at a conference, wouldn't it?" What? Anyway, so I've got it here. I don't dance very well, as you'll see here, but I think Bob and Lisa are going to get up on stage and oh, you're not? Okay. So I do have the YouTube video on it. It's not the best because it's people holding their mobile phones, but I think this really typified the turning point for PSA culturally and in terms of the way we work together. And it's become really a metaphor for how we're now working. We have one planned for this year at our conference that will become YouTube sensations, I guess. You just have to watch out for. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll now play that YouTube.
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city, off from my home. We're flying up, no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off it, moving so phenomenally. Come on, like the way we rock it, so don't stop. It's under the lights when everything goes. Nowhere to hide when I'm getting you close. When we move, well, you already know. So just imagine. Nothing I can see but you when you dance, dance, dance. Feel good, good,